Chapter 2. A series of puzzling events. Ethan was surprised by his father's unusual behavior, accurately predicting when his mother finished setting up breakfast without her calling him. This was a significant change from his father's habits, and it added to the peculiar happenings of the day. At the dining table, Ethan found his parents already seated with their hands raised, waiting for him to join them for breakfast. They remained silent, observing him. Ethan wondered why they were staring at him without eating. Both his mother and father gestured for him to start eating, still with their hands raised. Ethan looked at his well-balanced meal, containing the right proportions of carbohydrates, protein, fiber, fat, vitamins, and minerals. Millions of questions raced through his mind, but the signals from his stomach to his brain, notifying him of hunger, overtook all other thoughts. Once he took a bite, his parents lowered their hands and began eating. During breakfast, his mother suddenly stood up, took Ethan's empty glass, and went to the kitchen. Ethan, nearly finished with his meal, wondered why she took his glass as his mother returned with the glass filled with water. He was just 2 minutes away from completing his breakfast and did not feel thirsty. She placed it in front of him, exactly where she had taken it from, and smiled. Then she resumed eating. Shortly after, Ethan experienced a hiccup. To his surprise, he drank the water his mother had just refilled, leaving him puzzled about how she knew about his hiccup in advance. After breakfast, Ethan's parents sat on the couch with their hands raised. Confused, Ethan asked, "Can't you both talk?" His parents shook their heads horizontally. He continued, "Do you know what's happening to you?" Again they shook their heads. "Do you know why your hands are raised?" Once more they shook their heads. Perplexed, Ethan said, "I don't understand anything. What should I do now?" His parents smiled and his father handed him a note. It read, "Be patient. Everything is happening for a greater good reason. Be calm and trust the process. You will get what you want." Feeling uncertain, Ethan looked at his parents and inquired, "What do I want?" His parents smiled, stood up, patted his shoulder and back, and then went about their tasks. His mother headed to the kitchen, and his father left the house. Ethan followed his father outside and noticed an unusual calmness in his usually bustling street. It was very quiet, with only the sounds of wind and footsteps. Surprisingly, there were no cars around, and people were walking or using bicycles instead. He tried talking to people, but they seemed unresponsive. Accidentally slipping, he was caught by a stranger who helped him stand, smiled, and continued with their work. It felt like they knew he was there and understood what was going to happen to him. Everyone was busy, and his father joined a group cleaning the streets in an organized manner, separating biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste. People on bicycles carried the collected waste away. Thinking of his bicycle, Ethan wanted to retrieve it for faster travel. Feeling lost, he noticed everyone around him engaged in similar activities. Wanting to find someone like him, he ran to the service center where he had left his bicycle the day before. On the way, he observed everyone contributing to the community work. He wondered if he was dreaming, and his brain was being overly creative. However, he realized it could not be a regular dream because everything felt real, and there was a logical order to the events. He knew he was not dreaming. Ethan quickly ran to find his bicycle ready for him to ride. He decided to go to his college, hoping to find someone who seemed normal. Upon reaching the college, he shouted to get a response but was met with silence. Just as he was about to give up, he spotted his psychology professor moving around in a wheelchair, not holding his hands up like others. Ethan ran towards his professor and was out of breath by the time he reached him. The professor's legs were paralyzed due to a childhood accident. He remained still in his wheelchair. Ethan tried talking to him, asking questions about the strange occurrences around him. His professor remained silent and still. Ethan thought that maybe his professor was also under control. Confirming his suspicion, the professor smiled, offering Ethan a bar of dark chocolate in a red wrapper and a white rose from his lap, which he had covered using his hands. It was a daily routine for the professor to write a word on a piece of paper and give a chocolate bar to the first person who said that specific word. Ethan received the chocolate and rose, thinking about his long-standing desire to participate in the professor's daily ritual. Doubtful, he asked if he had spoken the word the professor had decided that morning. The professor nodded, reaching into his front shirt pocket to hand Ethan a folded piece of paper. Unfolding it, Ethan read the word "happening" on the outside and found a positive message inside. Everything that had happened for good. What is happening now is happening for good. All that is yet to happen will happen for good. After reading the message, Ethan felt confused. Something seemed off. First, his professor usually gave chocolate wrapped in white, but that day it was red. Additionally, his professor, who claimed not to like roses, gave him a white one. Ethan pondered this as he gently placed the rose in his shirt pocket and tucked the piece of paper and chocolate into his pants pocket. He waited for a while in his college, hoping someone would come in search of those who are normal like him without their hands being raised. But no one did. Realizing there was no point in staying, he decided to leave. On his way back home, Ethan reflected on the strange occurrences. As he passed houses, he observed women cleaning their homes and gardens. A boy from his class approached him with his hands down, but his excitement waned when he saw the boy carrying water bottles. The boy was among those who could have roughed him up the day before, had it not been for Lily's mother asking for directions to his house. The classmate handed him 2 small water bottles and returned home with his hands raised. Curious about the water bottles, Ethan continued towards his house. On his way, he saw a beautiful male peacock dead in the middle of the road. He wondered what could have killed it. Looking around, no one seemed to have noticed the dead peacock, as no one bothered to give it a proper burial. Ethan thought to himself that there might be a reason the peacock was dead, and it was his responsibility to bury it. There was something unusual about the peacock. Unlike the usual vibrant ones, it was dull-coloured, with a hint of gold mixed into its plumage. He searched for a proper place to bury the peacock. As he looked around, he found a woman walking towards him with a shovel. She approached him, both hands holding the shovel, and with her head and neck movement, she signalled for him to follow her. She marked a rectangular area near a tree with the shovel, pushed the shovel into the sandy ground, and then left the place with her hands raised. The doubt about him needing to bury the peacock was clarified by her actions. Ethan started digging the hole, which took him about 30 minutes. When the hole was around 3 feet deep, he carried the peacock to its grave and gently placed it inside the hole. He prayed for the peacock to have a better life in its next life or the afterlife, and began covering the grave with mud. Just before he finished closing the grave, a woman came to him with a red rose plant. He understood what needed to be done. He planted the rose and got up with a satisfying sense in his heart. Feeling low on energy, he decided to take a break. He sat on the pavement and realized that the tree beside which he had buried the peacock was the same one with the crow's nest on it. Watching the crows build their nest on his way to college was a routine he had developed since a crow droppings incident on his head a week ago. Thoughts about how crows build nests and share food crossed his mind, unintentionally leading him to compare them to the cooperative behavior of the people working together in the neighborhood. Feeling thirsty, he took a sip from the water bottle in his hand. The sun was at its peak, right on top of his head. He observed an old man walking normally with a stick in one hand and the other hand not raised. He almost did not notice the old man's hand not being raised, and when he did, he was excited. He left his bicycle and ran towards the old man, eager to start a conversation. Before Ethan could speak, the old man noticed him and chuckled. The old man asked, "Ah, boy, you have come. Did you bring it?" Ethan found it peculiar that the old man in his 80s and a stranger to him spoke as if he expected Ethan's visit. Given the recent unusual events, Ethan was less surprised, though he remained unaware of what the old man was referring to. Politely, Ethan said, "Sorry, sir, but I'm not sure what you're asking for." Suddenly, the old man coughed, losing balance. Ethan quickly caught him, preventing a fall. Grateful, the old man thanked him and explained, "I was asking for the chocolate and the white rose." With a hint of doubt, Ethan retrieved the chocolate from his pocket. The old man's face lit up at the sight of the chocolate with the red wrapper. Expressing his gratitude, the old man accepted the chocolate and rose, thanked Ethan, and continued walking. After a few steps, the old man coughed again. Concerned, Ethan offered to accompany him and offered a water bottle. The old man, in a rush, initially refused, but Ethan insisted. Getting the chocolate and rose from the old man, Ethan handed the water bottle, ensuring the old man drank it without any mishaps. Curious, Ethan asked, "May I know your name, sir?" The old man shared that his name was Sebastian and that he was heading to meet his wife. Ethan took back the water bottle and accompanied Sebastian. They reached a park where Sebastian sat on a bench. Ethan joined him and asked if he wanted to rest before meeting his wife. Sebastian explained, "My dear wife passed away 34 days ago. Since then, life has become unbearable. With no children and no one to care for, each day is a struggle without her. I miss her smile terribly. I've prayed for God to take me to her, but he hasn't accepted me yet." He looked at the confusion in Ethan's eyes and said, "You might be wondering why I'm sitting in a park instead of visiting her grave. Although her body is buried elsewhere, this park is where we shared many moments. I feel her presence here." Ethan was absorbing the fact that Sebastian's wife was dead and pondered upon the reason why he said he was waiting there to see his deceased wife. Sebastian believed he saw his wife and addressed her, saying, "Oh, there she is. She has arrived." Ethan did not see anyone around. Sebastian used his support stick to stand and interact with someone only he could see. Ethan realized Sebastian was imagining his wife's presence. Sebastian introduced Ethan as the boy who helped him, and Ethan's attempts to convince him otherwise were unsuccessful. Sebastian affectionately said, "My Rose, you look 40 years younger than me. I've brought you your favorites." On saying that, Sebastian handed the chocolate and the white flower to his wife, and Ethan, unsure of what to do, watched. To his amazement, the white rose and chocolate seemed to hover briefly in the air before falling to the ground. Though stunned, Ethan quickly dismissed it, thinking it might be his imagination. Sebastian expressed, "I have been waiting for this day," dropping his support stick and extending his hands as if someone were holding them. As he took a step forward, he began to fall. Ethan rushed to catch him, explaining that there was no one in front of him, but Sebastian could not stand. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as Sebastian's body went still in his arms. Panic flooded his senses, overwhelming him like a crashing wave. His hands shook as he gently laid Sebastian down, his heart racing with fear. Everything seemed to blur as shock and confusion engulfed his mind, leaving him struggling to make sense of what had just happened. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes as he realized that Sebastian had stopped breathing and his eyelids did not move. He looked around swiftly to see if someone would come to help him, but no one was around. A deep sense of helplessness and sadness washed over him. He thought to himself, "Why send me here if the plan was to take his life away? Why is all of this happening around me?" His tears rolled down his face as he closed Sebastian's eyes with his hands. Amid the chaos of emotions, he found a small comfort in knowing that Sebastian had passed peacefully, believing he was reuniting with his beloved wife. While wiping away his tears, Ethan felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning around, he saw a man with teary eyes. The man, supporting Ethan to stand up on his legs, gestured with his hands, indicating he wanted something. Initially confused, Ethan understood when the man pointed to the water bottle that he was asking for the empty bottle. After returning the empty water bottles, Ethan stood there clueless. 4 others approached him, tears in their eyes, signaling him to step aside from Sebastian's body. They carried Sebastian away. Once they left, Ethan glanced at the chocolate and the white rose on the ground. Leaving the park, he pondered these strange events without answers. Why did his professor give him the chocolate and rose? How did the old man know he would bring them? Why could only the old man talk to him? How did the people who came after Sebastian's death know he would be dead? Lost in thought and grief, Ethan headed back home. The street was empty and quiet. Parking his bicycle, he entered his house to find his parents at the dining table, hands raised for lunch. They smiled and gestured for him to join, but Ethan was not hungry. His parents' expressions did not change. Feeling uneasy and with unanswered questions, Ethan went to his room to rest. After a while, he decided to take a bath to refresh himself. Dressed and refreshed, he went downstairs for lunch, finding his parents in the same position. They smiled, and as he started eating, his parents dropped their hands and began eating too. After having lunch, Ethan went to his room and looked out the window. The town was still, and he could hear the wind gently rustling the trees. The sun was high, and it seemed like everyone was resting indoors. Sitting on his bed, Ethan wondered if these unusual happenings were the work of God. He questioned why he seemed to act independently, while others appeared controlled. The raised hands puzzled him. Was God favoring or disliking him? In the evening, when people emerged from their houses, Ethan stayed in his room, unsure of what to do. While contemplating the strange events, a gentle wind whispered, "Smile," through his window. Surprised, he looked around but found no one. Glancing at the list he had made for his life goals, Lily came to mind. Excited, Ethan wanted to learn more about Lily, amid the mysterious occurrences. Uncertain about how long the situation would last, he felt the urge to search for Lily immediately. Ethan rushed out of his house and realized his bicycle was missing. He felt a mix of sadness and excitement, thinking it might have been taken by someone normal. In a moment, a boy approached him with the bicycle. Though Ethan had seen the boy around in his neighborhood, they had never spoken. The boy, about Ethan's age, handed him the bicycle, smiled, tapped his shoulder, and left. Perplexed, Ethan wondered why the boy borrowed his bicycle and returned it just when he needed it. It seemed more than a coincidence, leading Ethan to believe he needed to find Lily's house. Determined to see the loveliest smile in town, Ethan rode fast, fueled by the thought of seeing Lily's smile. He roughly knew where her house was on the other side of town, and had an advantage in knowing Lily's mother and her car. Ethan reached the part of town where he planned to search for Lily's house. Excitedly, he checked all the houses on the street but could not find it. Despite feeling upset, he refused to give up. Calming himself down, he began a more thorough search without rushing. After a few houses, he noticed Lily's mother's black sedan parked in front of a big, beautiful house. In his initial excitement, he had missed it. Reflecting on the experience, Ethan realized the importance of staying calm. Thanking the universe for its grateful lesson, he entered the house through the large gates. Inside, he felt a welcoming atmosphere, with a pleasant breeze and a sweet scent. Hoping to find Lily, he called out her name but received no response. Undeterred, he started searching the house, which contained 4 master bedrooms and several smaller rooms. Knowing Lily's father would likely be outside, Ethan focused on finding Lily's mother. After checking the first 2 master bedrooms without success, he entered the third, which seemed to be in use. The room was filled with materials related to the human body. Pictures illustrating the anatomy of the brain, heart, and other organs adorned the walls, and scattered books suggested research on the human body was being conducted. Suddenly, Ethan heard footsteps and looked towards the room's entrance. Lily's mother appeared, raising her hands. For a moment, Ethan felt a bit uneasy, but relief washed over him when she smiled. Awkwardly, he tried to express himself, using random words that did not make much sense. They were all half-words used as fillers for a sentence of weird sounds. Realizing Lily's mother probably knew why he was there, he decided not to explain. Lily's mother gestured for Ethan to follow her, leading him to the main living hall and offering him some fruit snacks. As Ethan enjoyed the snacks, he eagerly anticipated seeing Lily. However, after waiting for about an hour, Lily did not appear. As darkness set in, Ethan started feeling doubtful about meeting Lily. Suddenly, he heard footsteps and hoped it was Lily, but it turned out to be Lily's father, carrying gardening tools. Unlike Lily's mother, he did not smile, and his facial features were mostly hidden by a bushy moustache and beard. Fearing a misunderstanding, Ethan nervously babbled words until he saw Lily's father smile, calming his nerves. It took a few deep breaths for Ethan to return to normal after Lily's father went inside the house. Ethan sat back on the couch, hoping to see Lily soon. Meanwhile, Lily's parents began doing household chores and later went into the kitchen to cook. Suddenly, the house became silent, making Ethan curious about what was happening. Worried that everyone might have turned into statues, he hurried to the kitchen only to find Lily's parents sharing a kiss. Witnessing the moment, Ethan smiled to himself and returned to the couch. Eventually, the usual sounds of kitchen activities resumed. As the night approached, Ethan started losing hope of seeing Lily that day and wondered where she might have gone. Feeling the need to return home for dinner, he decided to leave Lily's house with a heavy heart. Before riding his bicycle home, he looked up at the sky, raised his hands, and expressed his confusion and frustration. "Why are you giving me false hopes? Why am I here?" Riding towards home, he reached his room and felt sad about not being able to see Lily. The thought that the universe might not want them to be together made him emotional, and tears rolled down his face as he lay on his bed. Feeling sad for a while, Ethan remembered it was time for dinner. He did not wish for his emotions to affect his parents. He went downstairs, and his parents were waiting for him, just like during breakfast and lunch. Despite his efforts, Ethan found it hard to eat, feeling pain in his lower throat while swallowing his food. Tears rolled down his cheeks and into his mouth, and he felt the salty taste of tears mixing with his food. His parents too were in tears, struggling to eat. Realizing that his sadness might be affecting his parents, Ethan tried to overcome it. He shifted his focus away from the thoughts about Lily and concentrated on happy memories with his parents. Recalling a special moment that he considered one of the happiest in his life, he managed to overcome his sadness, at least temporarily. Shifting his thoughts required a lot of mental effort, but he saw a positive change in his parents' expressions. Wiping away their tears, they moved past the moment of sadness. After dinner, Ethan went to his room upstairs, sat on his chair, and looked out the window at the night sky. The familiar sounds of insects filled the night air. Suddenly he realized something was missing: the birds. He could not recall seeing any birds throughout the day, not even at the crow's nest. As he replayed the events of his day in his mind, he realized he had not seen any animals, including pet dogs and cats on the streets.